Welcome back to 3 News at 5. Former President Jimmy Carter had a lot of connections to Northeast Ohio. This includes a visit to Olivet Institutional Baptist Church in May of 1980. Carter's return home after the visit turned into quite the story for one of Cleveland's most historical figures in politics.
That's right. Former Cleveland City Council President George Forbes got a personal invitation to hitch a ride. Our Leon Bibb shares the story.
It was a 1980 day when a well-known Clevelander, who in a way stuck out his hitchhiking thumb and picked up a ride by a cross-country traveling president who advised him to hop in. It was President Jimmy Carter, and the vehicle hopped in was presidential aircraft Air Force One. After a trip to Cleveland, President Carter was headed back to the city's airport for the back-home trip to Washington. Cleveland City Council President Forbes was in the official entourage escorting Carter back to the airport.
So the president said, well, George, you can ride back with me to D.C. tonight. So I said, no, I can't do that. And the administrative assistant says, you can't tell the president what you can't do. I said, well, I'm sorry.
But George Forbes was under personal pressure, wishing to be home to prepare for his own trip to Washington the next day for a one-day meeting, while juggling his duties tying him up tonight with the president. He mentioned his tight schedule, and the next day, plans, to President Carter, who said, why do all that? I'm flying to Washington now. Just ride with me, George. So Forbes jumped out of the entourage and hopped on Air Force One. Riding with the president was not only big stuff, but also a time saver. But en route, Forbes realized he'd made no Washington hotel reservations for his day-early arrival. He whispered to President Carter, thanks for the ride, but I got nowhere to stay overnight. Now in flight aboard Air Force One, Carter responded, no need for a hotel, George.
And he looked back, he said, well, you can stay with me if you want to. I said, what you say, sir? He said, you can stay with me at the White House. I said, yes, sir, okay.
Seeing a need, Mr. Carter threw open the doors to the White House for a weary traveler from Cleveland. So George Forbes bunked in at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, the White House. Carter put him up in the historic Lincoln bedroom. Now that's a real upgrade. Cleveland Council President George Forbes was set up with toiletries and pajamas, maybe even a bathrobe too. And for tonight's stay, the soft sheets of the Lincoln bedroom.
I was thinking about Abe. Abe had slept here. I said, I'm sleeping in Abe's bed. Understand? You understand? And I looked at things. It was not ostentatious, just a bedroom.
Forbes said he needed just one more thing. A stickler for his appearance, he asked the president for an afro comb to handle Forbes's full head of hair.
True story, man. I said, I don't have my afro comb. He said, we'll take care of that, too.
Somewhere in a White House drawer, President Carter found an afro comb, so the hitchhiking Forbes could feel presentable for the business of the next day. Story of a weary traveler and a helpful president who picked up a Cleveland hitchhiker. And by the way, Forbes had breakfast the next morning with First Lady Rosalind Carter. Well, President Carter became an innkeeper who put up a hitchhiking traveler from Cleveland that night. Story of President Carter's White House, where for George Forbes there was room at the inn. For 3 News, I'm Leon Bibb.